Welcome back to Pointless Rewind as I analyze 1988's Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. These videos take a look at 3 positives from these movies as well as 3 negatives. That way I can't just blindly praise a movie or hate on a movie, it makes me objective. And looking at Halloween 4 demands objectivity because of its many facets. In some ways it's a cheap rehash of the original classic that feels like it was made for TV. And in other ways, it's the most tonally consistent of all the sequels. Also, at one point in my life, this was actually my favorite in the series. But that's not really all that important right now. Let's recap the movie first, then I can get into some details. It's Halloween Eve in 1988, and Michael Myers is comatose in a mental hospital when he hears the good news that he's an uncle, and gives the doctor delivering that news the old thumbs up. Meanwhile, his niece Jamie Lloyd is reeling from the fact that her mom, Laurie Strode, has died, leaving her with these nightmares of her murderous uncle who is looking flat out ridiculous in this outing, and with some random photos of actress Jamie Lee Curtis on the set of the classic horror film Halloween. Jamie also has an adopted older sister, Rachel, and their relationship is the heart of the movie. Meanwhile, Dr. Loomis's heart is still beating after his apparent death at the end of Halloween 2, and his heart desires just one thing: to put a stop to Michael's reign of terror in any way possible.
If you want another victim, take me. But leave those people in peace. Please.
Michael doesn't buy Loomis's feeble woe is me act for 1 second. I mean, if there's one person who can relate to the searing, unending pain Michael must be in from being at the epicenter of a massive fireball, it's the indestructible Samuel Loomis. So Michael starts creating mayhem on the way to and in Haddonfield as he closes in on his prey. Rachel and Jamie, meanwhile, are trick-or-treating, but at the behest of Dr. Loomis and Sheriff Ben Meeker, they lock themselves up in the Meeker household, not realizing that Michael is in there with them. And then Michael begins to make his move, and what ensues is probably the best climax in the series after the original, despite Michael looking like he has no idea what he's doing at any moment in this movie. Eventually, Rachel runs Michael over and everything looks good, except for Michael, of course, until Jamie follows in her uncle's footsteps with a horrifying attack on her stepmother that leaves Dr. Loomis a quivering mess. And it's mind-boggling that Jamie found inspiration in a guy who looks like this. So I've been dropping a couple of subtle hints here or there about something that nags me about this movie, so I might as well start with a weakness. What did they do with my beloved shape? Michael Myers, man, he is just off in this movie, and it all starts with that mask. He constantly looks bewildered and befuddled, the material looks cheap, the hair is goofy, and I can't believe the marketing team was okay with using these shots as publicity stills. This isn't even the same mask, they used a stupider version of the mask to market the movie. And I will say that the mask looks decent in certain scenes, but when it ranges from just decent to absolutely atrocious for most of the movie, that is not a good balance. Unfortunately, Michael's flaws are not limited to his mask. They also had stuntman George Wilbur wear hockey pads in this movie to compete with Jason. I don't know why they didn't just hire a bigger stuntman if they wanted to do this, because hockey pads look ridiculous on him. Michael's stance is awkward throughout, and anytime we are looking over his shoulder, the pads are super obvious. The mask sucks, but in movie it's justifiable because he grabbed the first thing he could find. But nobody respects putting hockey pads on a costume.
What's the difference between you and me?
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
It might sound like I'm being harsh, but I do think Michael's appearance takes away from some of his menace in this movie. Dr. Loomis still gives a hell of an effort in conveying Michael's evil.
You're talking about him as if he were a human being. That part of him died years ago.
But Michael just looks really goofy and doesn't come across as pure evil in this movie. There's a major disconnect between what we know of Michael Myers and what we see of him in Halloween 4. Like, it's hard to reconcile this image with the guy who pulls off a Terminator-esque feat by slaughtering an entire police force.
What's the difference between you and me?
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
I do think that director Dwight Little made a good choice to not show Michael too much. He goes for more of a ghost-like atmosphere in Halloween 4, which makes Michael still seem dangerous even though he looks pretty shitty. But there's also the issue of Michael not feeling like Michael because we don't have enough of him stalking anyone from the background. We have a couple of shots here or there, but Halloween 1 and 2 trained me to constantly look for Michael in the background, and anyone doing that in Halloween 4 is going to be disappointed. The few occasions we do get are pretty silly, like this one where Michael decides to hell with stealth, and neither Meeker nor Logan notice Michael standing with half of his shoulder pad enhanced physique in the doorway. And where did Michael get this spotlight? And not only is Michael now holding his breath in Halloween 4 after mouth breathing his way through the first two movies, we also barely see another trademark of Michael's, his walk. Other than a couple of quick shots of a step or two, I have no feel for George Wilbur's movements in this movie. I do think this was probably intentional to try to get that ghostly atmosphere they were going for, which is actually my first strength. The atmosphere in this movie is very different from its predecessors, and I actually think that Halloween 4 has the most tonally consistent atmosphere in the series after the original. Halloween's atmosphere was one of stillness and evil invading normalcy. Halloween 4's is one of isolation, and it's best captured in the brilliant and understated opening credits. This theme of danger lurking in solitude carries on into the main body of the film. Loomis finding an empty gas station is not the most interesting scene, but there's an inherent tension knowing that it's just him versus Michael here. And then when Michael knocks the power out and the cops whisk the people off of Haddonfield streets, Halloween 4 makes Michael feel threatening by not having him around, but just making him feel like a phantom that's haunting this town. Michael is more intangible in this movie than he is in the others. He's treated like a ghost, which feels intentional when the movie ends with him transferring his evil into Jamie. And it shows up in less obvious moments, like the eerie way Michael and his goofy mask emerge when Earl's truck enters a fog bank, or even in the scenes in the Meeker household. The main cast is hunkered down to hide from the Shape, while unbeknownst to them, the Shape is a part of that main cast. Michael is locked in with them, but for like 10 minutes we barely get a clue to his location. I think this is a POV shot, but mostly it's characters by themselves or in pairs, surrounded by inky blacks with very little indication of where Michael is. And when he finally attacks and kills Kelly, she feels like she's completely alone in this tiny room in the middle of a giant mansion, despite the fact that this is a simple residential house. The characters feel isolated through clever direction, pacing, and atmosphere. And that tone and atmosphere is a big reason that Halloween 4 has such a consistent feel. Unfortunately, its flow is anything but consistent, as the editing is my second weakness. Like, Michael's escape begins with him being loaded onto this ambulance, and then they are on the road, and the first words that are spoken are just the words that are needed to wake Michael up.
Did Hoffman say anything about living relatives?
Yeah, a niece living in his hometown.
This is why I don't like small talk, because small talk got that nurse killed. And the timing is just off in this scene, which is the more important point. Horror movies rely on surprise, but the timing has to be right, and this just feels jarring and too quick, like they couldn't wait to get done with this scene. I remember when I first watched this movie thinking this was a dream sequence because it felt so unnatural, and that haphazard editing continues the further we go on into the movie. Like, once night falls, the geography of Haddonfield becomes a mess, and the transitions from scene to scene are confusing. So Michael waits for the girls to leave for trick-or-treating, before going upstairs to obsess over these behind-the-scenes photos from his favorite movie of his favorite actress. Then he catches up to the girls just in time for some teenage drama. And then the movie abruptly shifts from the teenage drama to Rachel being terrified that Jamie is off on her own now.
Well, I'll just let you get back to Little Miss Hot Panties.
Like, the movie does show them getting separated, but without a tiny bit of dialogue of Rachel being like, oh, where's Jamie? It's almost like she goes from one universe to another from scene to scene. Then we have that moment where goofy shoulder pad wearing Michael with the slick back Italian mobster hair throws Bucky halfway across the world when his time would have been better spent killing Jamie, whom he had just isolated. But wait, now we cut to Rachel in this neighborhood where there's not a soul around, except Michael is here somehow, and I have to wonder, where the hell are they? I mean, we did see some parents picking up kids after the news announced the return of Michael Myers.
Everybody shut up a goddamn minute.
Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers.
Stay tuned to the station for updates.
But should this neighborhood be abandoned just because kids were picked up early? This window is broken, it looks condemned. It's like Rachel suddenly found herself on the bad side of town with it not being shown to us. And Jamie is also alone, but we get no scene of her being left by herself. It just sort of happens and ends up feeling a bit confusing. And speaking of confusing, let's look at Michael Myers' odyssey in this section of the movie. So he finds that picture of acclaimed actress Jamie Lee Curtis in the Caruthers house, And then he ran to the police station, most likely to ask them, hey, what's your favorite Jamie Lee Curtis movie? And then when they answered True Lies, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and co-starring Jamie Lee Curtis, he flew into a blind rage and murdered all the cops, a la the Terminator, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. And then he ran back to watch Jamie and Rachel trick or treat. And then he ran to the power plant to kill Bucky. And then he ran to this dilapidated house. And then he ran to the middle of this road. He's running so much. He's the Running Man starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. No wonder he got into Deputy Logan's car. He needed a nap. Halloween 4 repeatedly feels like it's missing those essential transitional moments that help the storytelling flow, and as a result, it comes off as patchwork. But while the scenes don't necessarily flow very well, the thing that holds this movie together are the wonderful characters. Donald Pleasance returns as Dr. Loomis, inexplicably still alive after sacrificing himself in Halloween 2. And this is the most tragic version of Loomis, a man who is beaten down by his experiences and is haunted by them.
I don't want anyone to have to live through that night again.
And I love that when he confronts Michael, he's not even angry, he's like resigned to this fate.
Why now? You waited 10 years. I knew this day would come.
And while I have a fondness for Loomis's calm demeanor with Sheriff Brackett, I do really like the testy relationship he has with Sheriff Meeker in this movie.
I tell you, Michael Myers is here, in this town.
Son of a bitch, you just created a lynch mob.
You haven't got a police force!
And obviously I will talk about that final twist and Loomis's reaction to it, but first let's talk about our dual protagonists, Jamie Lloyd and Rachel Caruthers. Jamie is Laurie Strode's daughter and is played by Danielle Harris, a fan favorite. And man, I can't imagine how bad this movie would have been if she was an annoying child actress. But Danielle Harris is awesome! Watching her deal with her grief over her parents' death is heartbreaking, but it also puts us squarely in her corner. Like watching Jamie deal with the bluntness of children makes me happy that most drama directed my way is passive aggressive. And many people feel like an outsider, but within your own family?
Do you love me, Rachel?
Of course I love you.
Like a sister?
Jamie, sometimes
Like a real sister?
Jamie is great, and even though there's a lot of heavy thematic stuff here that isn't all that pleasant, it's still really sweet to see her excitedly getting candy when the specter of her uncle looms large over the movie. And of course, when Jamie's actually in danger, it's easy to root for her, but she's not all that resourceful. This is not like Home Alone or anything like that. No, the resourcefulness is left to Rachel, played by Ellie Cornell, and watching her protect her foster sister is fantastic. That's when the movie's at its most effective. Rachel is amazing, and she is probably my favorite non-Loomis, non-shaped character in the entire series. Like, this movie is 88 minutes long, and still, Rachel gets to naturally showcase so many facets of her character, and Ellie Cornell plays her with the perfect level of warmth and teenage anxiety.
Your mother used to babysit me when I was your age. I bet you didn't know that.
What am I supposed to tell Brady? Sorry, but I've got to babysit my foster sister. Go and have fun by yourself.
But what makes Rachel so great is how she reacts once Michael attacks. Sure, she has to be dragged away hysterically when Brady's being killed, but once she is all that is between Jamie and Michael, she takes on this new badass persona that is just incredible to watch.
I want you to get down to the chimney, Jamie. I can't! We'll try, damn it!
And the combination of Rachel's protectiveness here and Alan Howarth's score transitioning from Jamie's beautiful theme into the Halloween score always gives me chills.
Jamie, get on. Hold on.
As for side characters, Halloween 4 looks like it's about to make a big mistake by introducing too many friends of Rachel's, but it smartly narrows its focus, allowing us to get to know Brady and Kelly. And while neither of them is likable, they're both charismatic. Yeah, they're screwing over Rachel, but they also feel relatable, and they seem like real teens, even if they both look like they're approaching middle age very fast. And because Halloween 4 lets us get to know them, similar to how the original handled characters, I actually feel bad when they die.
Metal! God damn it, it's metal!
What does that mean?
We're trapped in this house.
Yeah, so of course I feel bad for Brady. He's a simpleton. Who goes, it's metal! God damn it, it's metal! Yes, I know it's burned his hand, but Brady's fight or flight instincts are all messed up. Hence why he stands nice and still for Michael to lumber up to him and crush his head. And if we want a more natural reaction to the night's horror, let's turn to the end of the movie and Dr. Loomis.
No! 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 No!
This ending is so good, it's such a powerful and unexpected twist that I had to skip over the next weakness and talk about my third strength, the ending to Halloween 4. All movie long, we've been rooting for Jamie. Watching Michael trying to kill this kid is pretty grim stuff, but Jamie's relationship with Rachel and the Caruthers is a constant source of warmth. To see all of that collapse at the end when Jamie replicates her uncle's first murder is heartbreaking, and my god, what an arc for Dr. Loomis. For 3 movies, he's had the perfect level of exhaustion, weariness, and determination in dealing with Michael, but to see him reduced to anguished tears is a whole nother animal. And yes, Halloween 5 completely torpedoes this twist almost immediately, and so it does lose some of its impact, but taken in a vacuum, this is an audacious finish to a slasher sequel. So the twist is phenomenal, but the reason Halloween 4 used to be my favorite in the series is I loved the entire ending. Starting with Michael impaling Kelly with a shotgun, and his battle with Mr. Goddammit It's Metal himself on the staircase. This all leads to the tense and claustrophobic chase on the freaking roof of the house. Such a unique spin on a typical slasher movie chase, and it's riveting. Sometimes these movies can get silly with how quickly Michael catches up to the characters, but in this scene it makes sense as Rachel and Jamie are moving at a snail's pace. Admittedly, I'm not a fan of the school scene, but the finale on the truck more than makes up for it. It gets the adrenaline pumping, it's still a horror movie, but this ending works really well with a heavier emphasis on action that makes the Arnold Schwarzenegger references I made earlier make some sense.
How could that man just get up after you did?
It's not a man. Machine. Terminator.
What does that mean?
Metal! God damn it, it's metal!
But unfortunately, I jumped the gun and did 2 strengths in a row, so I'm not going to be able to finish this video on a high note the way Halloween 4 does, because I got to talk about the last weakness. And that is that too often Halloween 4 feels cheap. I already touched on the nonsensical scene transitions and the mask, but I haven't talked about the fog machines, which is tough. There's fog literally everywhere in this movie. The fog can add to the atmosphere, but the way it's used in Halloween 4 feels manufactured. Then there's the whole narration from the security guard at the beginning, which feels like a fan doing a plot synopsis for the first 2 movies.
He murdered 16 people, maybe more, trying to get to his sister. But his doctor, of all people, shot him 6 times.
Yeah, you can quote Halloween 2. We all can. That doesn't make you special. Also, hyperbole like this sounds way better coming out of Dr. Loomis's mouth than yours.
I shot him 6 times!
Then there's the way that these opening minutes repeatedly frame shots from behind bars. This is a visual technique that communicates claustrophobia or a feeling of being trapped, but seeing it like 3 times in 2 minutes feels cheap and ineffective. And look, there's some steam coming out of the pipe near Michael. That's basically fog also. I don't know, Halloween 4 comes off as brilliant one moment, but amateurish in the next, like they just didn't have time to clean things up. The school scene where they inexplicably use the wrong mask is one example, or this scene that is very weirdly edited. The big reveal here is that Michael has vanished, but the impact is undercut when they show it to us twice. And then there's this amazing sound mixing.
That clown costume's really cool.
Yeah, that ADR is super bad, and sometimes Halloween 4 can just feel cheaper than these videos. But that is the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and
that clown costume's really cool.
Yeah? Thanks! Wait, what clown costume? This? No, oh man, no. This is just a note to remind me to talk about a clown costume on this video. And also, look, there's a note to ask for likes and subscriptions. So if you don't mind, can you please... Oh, well, he's gone.